Apparently, it is now official, the episodes of the new Power Rangers series are going to be approximately 60 minutes long, which means that they are not just going to create a silly series. Let's break this down a bit. First, let's find out where this information is coming from. The official producer of the new Power Rangers universe is Jonathan, but the one who is going to be the showrunner of the project is Jenny Klein. For those who don't understand what this position means, the showrunner is the person who directs the course of the project from conception to post-production, making sure to maintain the integrity of the project's vision during every part of the process. In simpler words, she is the person in charge of making the whole idea of the project come to life and making sure that everything is perfect. On Jenny Klein's official website there was an important change in which she confirms that the new Power Rangers series will have a duration of 60 minutes, and it is from this place that the official information about this important piece of information comes out. Why does the length of the episodes mean so much? Normally series that are children's series, comedy series, or some series with a not-so-serious style, have a duration of 30 minutes or less. However, drama, action, fantasy, or serious style series are almost always 60 minutes long. Usually this is because the producers want to develop a better story with a lot of details, and they need enough time to be able to connect us with everything that is happening. We could tell that the special episode was around 60 minutes long, and this felt amazing as they were able to develop the story a lot more. If this was the case in the special episode, then imagine what they will be able to accomplish in a multi-episode series that will all be 60 minutes long. The producers will be able to develop a deep story with many details, and we will be able to know each character well. In addition to getting to know the lives of the main characters, they will also be able to delve into the history of power, and I only use the word power because we don't know if they are going to use the same idea that we have always seen in Power Rangers. I want you all to have a clear example of what it means that the episodes have a duration of 60 minutes, and the best comparison is one of the most watched series in these times. Game of Thrones is a series that can basically have the same basic things that Power Rangers has, and even though they are obviously nothing alike, Power Rangers can emulate the core basis of this famous franchise. Game of Thrones is a series that includes drama, action, and fantasy, plus, due to its 60 minutes long format for each episode, they have enough time to give protagonism to many different characters. Let's remember that in Power Rangers there are many characters that are practically protagonists, since, if the team has 5 Rangers, then you already have 5 important characters. Besides the Rangers, you should also give a lot of importance to the mentor of the team, since he is a very important part of the plot and could be a great story. We could see this with Zordon, who has become one of the most important characters in the entire history of Power Rangers, and we know that all the fans would have liked to see the whole story of him before Rita had locked him up. Another important character that deserves prominence in Power Rangers is the villain, and villains are always super important in all superhero productions. Both sides of the coin are equally important, and in superhero projects, the villains are just as important as the heroes. If you don't have a good villain in a story, then it's not going to matter if the superhero is amazing, because it's not going to be interesting to watch that battle. This was one of the things that held Power Rangers back a lot, because since it was a children's series, then they couldn't create very evil and powerful villains because it would scare the children's audience. In this new phase of Power Rangers, where the series is going to be created for a young adult audience, the producers will have all the freedom to be able to create really evil, scary, powerful, and dangerous villains. This will make the stories more entertaining because the Rangers will have to be really powerful to defeat the villains. In a story like this, It's not going to be enough for the Rangers to summon a super-powered sword and with one move defeat the monsters. All of this is what it means for the episodes to be 60 minutes long, as that's going to be enough time for them to delve into the villain's backstory and his plans to destroy the Rangers. It's also going to be enough time for them to delve into everything that the Rangers will have to do in order to defeat that villain, and this can include many things such as travel to other planets, dimensions, or time travel. There are many possibilities since Power Rangers is a fantasy universe that includes all those things, and this is why this change in audience is very important. Perhaps we think that the change in the length of each episode is the important change, but the reality is that the important change has been the change in audience. If the target audience for the new Power Rangers universe had been a children's audience, then they would not be able to have episodes with a length of 60 minutes, since we all know that projects for children's audiences cannot last that long. This means that as the age of the audience changes, the producers can start making major changes, and the first one we are looking at is the length of each episode. We still don't know how many episodes each season is going to have, but according to Netflix's style, each season could have between 8 to 10 episodes. The Game of Thrones series has 10 episodes in each season, and although this series is not from Netflix, we understand that this number of episodes for each season is pretty standard. We must remember that the advantage that fantasy series have is that you can keep creating and expanding the universe with the power of the script. We should also remember that Power Rangers can keep expanding because of the style that the franchise has always had of continuing to create different teams. In addition to this, Power Rangers also has time travel in different dimensions, so they can keep expanding the universe for many years to come. This means they could do many seasons of 10 episodes each with a length of 60 minutes per episode and still have plenty of material for the series to last 30 more years. Despite all this, we do not know if the new producers want to follow in the footsteps of the original Power Rangers series, since in this new universe, they can change everything and create a totally different universe. Perhaps in this new universe they seek to create something more realistic without having to enter the multiverse or time travel. Maybe they prefer to create a team of Power Rangers who have to deal with the consequences of each battle, or maybe the battles will be simpler, but no less fun. By this I mean that perhaps the battles will be more melee and that they will not use so many weapons or explosions. In order to know all this, we must continue to wait, and we all hope that soon we will continue to receive more information about the new universe. What would happen if the Power Rangers reboot fails? For those who don't already know, the Power Rangers franchise is getting a reboot, and Cosmic Fury was the last season of the universe we've all known for 30 years. The reboot is going to change everything drastically, and this may be good, but it also means a very big risk. The changes of the reboot include that the franchise is going to create a new universe that is not going to have any connection with the previous universe. This means that we will never be able to see the Rangers we already know participating in this new universe. Of course, this doesn't mean that we won't be able to see some of the actors, since the actors and the characters are different concepts. Another change that the reboot includes is the change of audience, since we all know that Power Rangers has always been created for a child audience, but according to the information on the internet, the reboot is supposed to be aimed at young adults. This change is the most significant since it opens the door to many other big changes in the franchise, and it is from this point that other things begin to emerge. By changing the type of audience a project is aimed at, it means that you can modify practically everything, and you only have to leave the essence intact. What does this mean? Earlier we talked about the essence of the franchise, which involves the core idea of what Power Rangers is, and this includes the costumes, the transformations, the power, the weapons, and some other important things. Now that the franchise is going to be aimed at a more adult audience, then you have to include all of those things, but at the same time you can make some pretty dramatic changes to it. For example, we have previously talked about the costumes, which can be a key factor for this new universe not to be a failure. I'm not saying that the costumes are the most important thing, but imagine having a great story, great characters, awesome weapons, but horrible costumes. Obviously, it's not going to have the same impact, because every time those costumes appear, then you're going to feel uncomfortable, and you won't have the same excitement to watch the series. That's why every change they're going to make in the reboot is very important, because the new producers have the eyes of all the fans judging any changes they're going to make in this new beginning. So, let's go back to the initial question. What would happen if the Power Rangers reboot fails? The reality is that this answer is based on each person's opinion, as there are different paths Hasbro can take if the reboot fails. I want to make it clear that I am all for the reboot and want this new beginning to be a success, but in life we must also be prepared for failures. Even big companies like Hasbro are always prepared for failures, because for us fans the failure of a project only means disappointment, but for the company that is creating the project it means a big loss of money, and sometimes it can mean the demise of the company. In this case, I don't think that the failure of Power Rangers will cause Hasbro to disappear, but we know that obviously the company doesn't want to lose money either, and that's why they must be prepared for any outcome. The first thing we must say is that if the reboot fails, then the biggest anger that fans will have is that they stopped the universe we have known for 30 years for nothing. You have to remember that a huge sacrifice has been made to be able to do this reboot, since you stopped a franchise that had been going on for 30 years without stopping, and this involves the childhood of many people. Besides this, even though the franchise was no longer having the success it had many years ago, we must accept that the last few projects were impressive. Cosmic Fury changed the format of the series, and this helped a lot to get old fans interested in watching that season. Another change Cosmic Fury had is that they used very few scenes from the Japanese series and also created original costumes. These small changes were what they needed to do many years ago so that the franchise could be different and have another chance to be successful again. Another project we had was the special episode to celebrate 30 years of the franchise, which was an episode to celebrate Mighty Morphin, and it was also a very different project. In this episode they involved legends of the franchise and at the same time created a great story that paved the way for a new generation. This great opportunity to perhaps create a new series of a second generation of Mighty Morphin with a more adult style was lost due to the reboot, and this is what Hasbro risked to create the new universe. If the reboot fails, then they could make another attempt by creating another new universe, but this would take several years, and this is what happened with the 2017 movie. For those who didn't know, this movie was the first attempt to do a reboot of the franchise, but the difference is that the regular series never stopped. That attempt was before Hasbro started the franchise and was possibly what sparked their interest in Power Rangers. Since Hasbro bought the franchise, their idea was to do a reboot and turn it into a universe for a more adult audience. This obviously could not be done so quickly, and that is why they created Beast Morphers and the first season of Dino Fury. The second season of Dino Fury wasn't even going to exist, but because the reboot wasn't ready yet, so the company decided to make that second season. Then they created Cosmic Fury to keep giving the reboot time, and this may be a good sign. A good production takes a long time to create, and if Hasbro has given all these years to the new producers to get ready, then it may be a good sign. Obviously, the reboot is still in development, which means they are still deciding on the first things, although the script is said to be ready. Another important change they announced recently is that the episodes are going to be 60 minutes long, and this is also a good sign. With this length, then they can develop a deep story, and in this way we will all be able to connect better with the characters. Another avenue to look at if the reboot fails is that perhaps they could continue with the old universe and keep creating new seasons. This would be a little bit weird because, if you're making the decision to stop that old universe, it's because you know it's not succeeding anymore, and you have a good chance that you're never going to get the franchise off the ground that way. The reality is, if they implement the changes they made in Cosmic Fury and additionally also create another alternate series with the story of the special episode, then they could improve the franchise a lot. In the special episode we had the new Yellow Ranger, which was a great decision to have included her as part of the team, and they can do this with the other colors. The legendary Rangers could stay as mentors, while the new Rangers could be the new Mighty Morphin team, and this series could be aimed for a more adult audience. This way they would have a series for adults and a series for a children's audience. The next children's series could be like Cosmic Fury, not use Japanese scenes, create new original costumes, and have all the episodes connected. What if the reboot fails? They can make another attempt after a few years. They can also revive the old universe by creating 2 different series for different audiences, and they can also continue with the new universe until we fans get used to the change. We know we've talked about the reboot quite a bit, but this is the future of Power Rangers, and we need to keep talking about it. According to rumors on the internet, the new Power Rangers project is going to be about a new team and not the story of an old team that we already know. This is basically the same thing that happened in the 2017 movie, which was supposed to be a reboot of the franchise, and they started with the Mighty Morphin story. In this movie they only used the names and some important things about the characters, but they completely changed the origin story of each character. They also changed the origin story of the entire team, including the story of Zordon and also the villain Rita Repulsa. It was assumed that if the movie had been a success, then they would make a sequel, which was going to include Tommy Oliver, and we assumed that this was going to be an interesting story. As far as we managed to understand, at the end of this first movie we could see that Rita froze in space, and this made us think that she passed away. If this was the case, then what was Tommy's story going to be like without Rita? In the TV series we all know that Tommy started being a Power Ranger thanks to Rita Repulsa, who gave him the Green Ranger power to destroy the other Power Rangers. If in the second 2017 Power Rangers movie Rita wasn't going to appear, then Tommy Oliver's story was going to be very different, and perhaps the reboot of the franchise would have taken a very different direction. Unfortunately, we fans didn't take all the changes very well, and possibly changing the story from another story we already knew was a mistake, since Mighty Morphin is the foundation of the franchise. This team is the most famous of all, and changing the entire story was like destroying something we love to build something else. This detracted from the importance of the new story, and this was the first step towards the failure of that project. Despite this, the producers had another alternative that they did not use if they wanted to do the Mighty Morphin story again. Obviously, another alternative was to create a new team, and there they could create any story, but if the intention of the producers was to use the Mighty Morphin team, then there was another alternative. In that 2017 movie they used the Mighty Morphin team, but they changed absolutely everything, and the only thing they had similar to the original team of the TV series were the names of the characters. What would have happened if the producers had stuck more to the TV series? This is the other alternative they had, and it is still an alternative that the new producers of the reboot have. Although the rumor is that they are going to create a new team with a new story, this is still not official since no one knows anything about the script that is already created, and that is why we can still speculate. This other alternative to use the Mighty Morphin team or maybe any other team of the franchise that we already know, is that they just make an improvement of everything we have already seen. This means continuing to use the same concept, the same story, and the same characters, but completely changing the visual quality. They could also change some things about the story so that it can be a darker series, and this includes changing the visual style of everything. The 2017 movie had a new style which was quite dark and dramatic, but because they changed the costumes, weapons, and some important story details, it caused us to not feel like they were the Mighty Morphin. However, if they use a similar costume design to the originals but improve the material to make them look like Mighty Morphin costumes, then everything is going to feel different. This also includes modifying the weapons, Zords, command center, and all the special effects. I don't want you to be confused by this idea. This is not similar to what we saw in the 30th anniversary special episode, as even though the visual quality of that episode was much better than what we saw in 1993, this could be much better. Previously, we have featured some designs of the Ranger costumes that amazing artists have created, and when you see those designs you can identify each Ranger, but you also realize that the costume does actually have a better quality look to it. We have also presented on the channel some Zord designs which look like real machines, but they don't lose the style that we saw in the Mighty Morphin team. Basically, it would be like seeing the Mighty Morphin in an improved universe, with an incredible quality and in a darker version. This whole path may have many benefits, although it obviously also includes risks, but perhaps the risks are not as great as starting with a new team. First, let's define all the risks that the reboot is going to have by creating a new team and a new story. Being a new team, then they don't know if that whole story is going to work, they don't know if the fans are going to love the characters, and they don't know if the style that the team is going to have will be liked by the viewers. Remember that there have been seasons that have failed because of the lousy theming they have had, since this is an important part for every team. Even, I dare to say that this was another reason why the 2017 movie failed, as that team had no theming and were just generic costumes with different colors. Another risk the reboot has in creating a new team is the villains, as all superhero projects always have to have a great villain to be a success. Obviously, all of these things also represent a big advantage in a way, as it gives a lot of creative freedom to the producers to be able to create a great team with an awesome theme and a spectacular villain. It also gives them the opportunity to create a story that they can think about with another story in the long run to create a connected universe, and this would give life to the franchise for many years to come. Unfortunately, this is easy to say, but not so easy to do, since it all hinges on the first season. If the fans don't love that first season, then it is very difficult for them to create more seasons or movies. Now let's name the advantages and disadvantages that the reboot can have using the Mighty Morphin team, but with an improved visual quality. The first advantage they have is that the Mighty Morphin is already a team that many fans love, and even though they would use different actors to portray each character, still, I think with the right actors they could make the fans continue to love the team. The other advantage they have is that the Mighty Morphin villains are excellent and have a lot of potential to be improved. Rita Repulsa and Lord Zed would be excellent villains if they could be in an adult project, with a darker style where they could show all their real evil. The other advantage is that the Mighty Morphin theme is already proven to be one of the best, and this also includes the music, which is the most famous. If in the reboot they use that theme, that music, the costume design, and the Zords, but with a better visual quality, then it could be something awesome. Since the Mighty Morphin story is a bit repetitive thanks to the style that was used in the TV series, then they can create a new story starting from the basic things we saw from the beginning of the series. This is basically the same thing they did in the comics, and it has worked great for them. We know that the reboot of Power Rangers is not going to be about the Mighty Morphin story, but we do know that possibly the main character is going to be Tommy. According to the information on the internet, it is said that this Tommy has nothing to do with the Tommy Oliver we met in Mighty Morphin, and they simply used that same name for the new main character of the new universe. Nobody knows if this character is going to be similar to Tommy Oliver, because even though they have already said that it is not the same Tommy we already know, we really don't know if they are going to use the same characteristics. We don't know if they are only going to use the name or if they are also going to use the personality, the powers, and some other things that describe Tommy Oliver. Despite this, they are using Tommy's name to possibly create an interest in the fans to watch the new series, and with this we can ask ourselves certain questions. Why did they use Tommy? Should they have used another character? If we are really fair, Tommy Oliver is possibly the most famous Ranger in the entire franchise, but there is another Ranger who is perhaps equally or even more famous than Tommy. Jason the Red Ranger from Mighty Morphin, the first Ranger of the entire franchise, considered the best leader of all time, could also be the protagonist of the reboot. As I said earlier, they may not use anything about the Jason we have known all our lives, but they could also use his name to create interest in fans to want to watch the new series. Basically, use the same strategy they are using with Tommy, but using Jason's name since he could be on the same level as Tommy. Maybe over the years this has been forgotten, since for the new generations maybe Tommy is more famous, but within the Power Rangers universe, Jason is a legendary Ranger as well. We could see this in the Battle of Forever Red, in which Jason was received as the most important and legendary Ranger, even though Tommy was also part of that team. If they get to use all the characteristics of these characters for the new reboot project, then we must share some important facts as to why both Rangers can be on the same level to be the main character. We are going to make this look like a battle between the two Rangers, and in the comments, you be the judge. Both Rangers have various transformations, and this is what makes the battle more interesting, as each transformation has its own specialty, and this is why these two legends are so important. We have seen them fight together many times, but when Tommy joined the Power Rangers, they had a bit of trouble relating to each other as they both have leadership qualities. We can start by talking about Jason, who was the first leader of the Power Rangers and who is considered the best leader of all time. Even Tommy himself used to ask him for advice all the time, even when he started being the leader when he became the White Ranger. Jason, with his red Mighty Morphin transformation, has a very powerful sword which, when he passes his hand over the blade of the sword, it lights up with a beam of light which fills it with more power. It was even with this sword filled with the beam of light that he disarmed Tommy and then destroyed his sword with the blaster. Jason's fighting style is very varied since he has been practicing martial arts for a long time. Another of Jason's transformations is that of the Golden Ranger when he began to replace Trey of Triforia. This transformation is one of the most powerful of the whole franchise, since a human being cannot resist it for a long time due to all its power. With this transformation, Jason acquires greater speed and more power when attacking. He also has his golden staff of power that helps him to collect energy to throw it later. Also, this transformation comes with a good protective shield that gives him a better defense to withstand greater attacks. Lastly, another of Jason's transformations is into Omega Ranger, one of the most powerful transformations as it comes directly from the first Rangers and is given to him by the Blue Emissary himself. The power of the Omega Ranger is very great as this transformation must be prepared for greater challenges. Although Jason can also obtain the powers of the Green Ranger, we cannot make a good comparison of this since in a battle that power would be used by Tommy in his transformation. Let's talk about Tommy Oliver, who started out as the Green Ranger, a powerful transformation which was the first to have a shield that gave him a good defense against any attack, although the real defense was his dagger. This dagger was not only used to call his Dragonzord, but also to create an energy shield which returned all the attacks that were thrown at him. This dagger was also useful for melee attacks, having the benefit of being able to attack closer to his opponent. Another powerful transformation is that of the White Ranger, and in my opinion, I think this may be his most powerful transformation as it is accompanied by the most powerful weapon in the entire franchise. His great fighting moves started with this transformation, and we could see this not only in the TV series, but also in the movie. Although Tommy has more transformations like Turbo and Zeo, which are also very powerful, I want to highlight Dino Thunder. In this transformation we can see a more experienced and battle-savvy Tommy. He also has his staff which has several very powerful hits and an energy orb. Both Rangers have excellent transformations and great battle modes. Both have many years in battle and are very experienced. This gives them maturity in fighting which translates to great strategy. Here we cannot only gauge their fighting form and transformations, we can also talk about their abilities as leaders and how each was able to solve problems to help the others. Although we may know that Tommy has been appearing longer in the series, we can tell that when Jason appears he creates a big impact and stands out at any given moment. When measuring these two giants, don't think about the amount of time they appeared in the series because even though Tommy was around longer, Jason has managed to create practically the same impact in less time, and that also has a lot of value. In the comments, write Jason if you think he will win this battle, or write Tommy if you think he would be the winner. Before voting, think honestly and not with your fanboy heart, measure all his skills and transformations. Tell me, who would win in this mighty battle, Jason or Tommy? Now we just have to wait because even though there is some information all over the internet about the reboot, the reality is that there is very little confirmed. No one knows yet if this reboot is really going to have some of the old characters or if they are really going to create all new ones. This thing about using Tommy's name in the new series has only been rumors and is still unconfirmed, so for the moment we are still creating theories. As many already know, the Power Rangers franchise is on hiatus right now and is expected to have a reboot in 2025. Is this reboot going to include the mighty Morphin? Will we see old Rangers in this new version of the franchise? The reality is that many may be confused by these questions, and in this video, we are going to try to clarify all this, but at the same time to analyze if the best is what they are going to do in 2025. The first thing we must define is the difference between reboot and remake, since both things are totally different, but people usually confuse these two words. In a very simple way, we can define that remake is to create the same project, with the same characters, story, and scenarios, but improving everything with new technology. In the world of cinema, it is known that as technology advances, films also improve in the visual part, but obviously this does not mean that they improve in other things. Because of this, old movies are often used that had a great script, but for their time they didn't have enough technology to create what they wanted. Then with new technology they can create many of these things that were impossible before, so they use all the history of that old movie, including script, scenery, characters and everything else, to create a new movie. This is what remake means, a new movie that uses all the elements of the old movie, but just improving some things. The reboot is something very different in that they simply use some important elements, but the producers are looking to take another path in the story. In this format the characters are used, but they are looking to create something very different and a story that goes in a different direction. This is the same thing that has happened with all the Spider-Man movies, as they used some important characters but changed almost everything else. According to information that has rambled around the internet, a reboot is said to be what the Power Rangers franchise wants to do, and this is almost a gamble. When producers do a remake, they are almost certain that the final product is going to work since it comes from another old product that already worked in the past or that had all the necessary elements to succeed and just didn't happen due to lack of technology. However, a reboot is a total risk because even though you are going to use the base of the old project, you are still going to create something totally different. In the case of Power Rangers, when it was released in 1993 it was a success, and this was for many different reasons. After so many years the world has changed and now, they need other things to be able to succeed in a new Power Rangers series. We are going to start by looking at a reboot and the things they need to do to possibly succeed. Then we will analyze a remake and what it should look like so that maybe it can have a chance for success. The things that a reboot needs to do to be a success we have mentioned many times, and they are pretty remarkable things. For many years Power Rangers has been airing, but little by little their success has declined, and they no longer generate the same revenue as they used to. The first thing they should do is to identify all the things that made Power Rangers not reach the absolute success as it happened in the 90s. For me the first step would be to change the audience to which the new universe is directed, and this has already been done since according to some information the new series will be for those over 14 years of age. This change is due to the fact that children don't watch television and they don't buy so many toys. The reality is that the adult audience is the one that is watching this type of content such as superhero movies, fantasy worlds, and the like. This means that if Power Rangers targets that type of audience they can have the opportunity to have more audience and they will also sell more products since that will open the door for other items. Lately the only thing that was selling Power Rangers were toys, but if they start creating a series for an adult audience, then they will be able to sell clothes, more expensive collectibles, shoes, and some other things that have never been sold in this franchise. When the franchise started, they managed to sell practically everything, but at this point they are not managing to sell almost anything anymore, and this is why Power Rangers needs a change. Another thing they need to change in the reboot is the stories because, if the series is going to be directed towards an adult audience, then they can create deeper and more dramatic stories. This is why the first change had to be the audience change, as that was going to open the door for other much needed changes, and this brings me to my next point. Another change that was confirmed is the length of the episodes, and we already know that each episode will be 60 minutes long. This will help the story to be deeper and we will have more time to get to know all the characters. Obviously, this can be a double-edged sword because, if they don't write a good story, then they can get the whole script of nonsense just to be able to use the 60 minutes. Creating series with this length is very difficult as the whole plot must be excellent because if this does not happen then the viewer can easily get bored. One change they must make in a reboot, but also in a remake, is the visual part, and this includes costumes, effects, set designs, and many other important things. That said, let's start analyzing the changes that a remake could have if this was what the producers had chosen. The reality is that Power Rangers didn't need a remake since new seasons were still being made at this time, so a remake is not going to make any sense. The only way a remake would make sense is if they had made it of Mighty Morphin, because it's the older team and by 1993 the special effects were terrible. That's why it was so exciting to be able to see the Mighty Morphin in the special episode, because we got to see them with all the new modern technology, and we all got to see how amazing the team looked. The remake could also be done of other old teams that also didn't have the technology at the time to be able to create what they needed. Despite this, the team that transcended the most in the franchise was Mighty Morphin, and that's why it makes more sense to create a remake with this team. If they remake this team and change important things, even if they use the same characters and the same plot, it is very likely that it could be successful. The only thing that could be a risk is if that remake is aimed at the children's audience, since no matter what changes they make, that kind of audience doesn't watch TV anymore. We don't know if by targeting the project to another type of audience it would still remain a remake, but it would be the only way to achieve success. Even in the special episode, this was what the writers wanted to do, as they understood that Mighty Morphin fans are adults, and it would have been awesome to see a very dark story. If we had a remake of Mighty Morphin, aimed for an adult audience, using all the modern technology with a big budget, the Rangers with new modern costumes, and using the same old story as a base to create something better, then that could be the most impressive Power Rangers project ever. The best proof of this has been the comics. Even though there we can't see any changes in the visual part because they are still drawings, we can see the change in the story, as it is a darker drama and they have used the same characters we already know. Write in the comments if you prefer a reboot or a remake. Like this video and subscribe for more information about Power Rangers.